was so much work to be done.
Okay. Hi, everyone online. Thank you for joining us. We apologize for the delay. We had a little bit of a setup and technical issues are always fun, but thank you for joining us. We are talking with Lisa Anderl this afternoon, and she's running for position six. Sorry, I don't have my notes in front of me. I'm Laurie. I want to welcome you to Island Books. We have a crowd here. We're going to have them all say their names just so you know who is in the room. If you online have questions, please ask them in the chat and we will get to them as soon as we can. And please make sure you're muted. I don't care if your camera's on. It's always fun to see faces online, but please make sure you're muted. So we're going to start to the left of Lisa.
Jake Sedlock.
Doris Kassan.
Lloyd Gilman.
Jim Eames,
John Hall.
Mary Robbins,
Ashley Hay, Tracy Grimbois,
Mike Zero, Tim Punk.
Sarah Smith.
Carol Branham.
Lisa Wood.
Matt Goldbach.
Okay, we're good. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, do you wanted to do a quick mic check?
Oh, yeah,
People-
yeah. Can people hear me? This is what would be my normal tone of voice. So if we need to move the mic closer, give it.
And Lisa, the other thing that we found in previous, if you could just repeat the questions that are asked in the room. That would be great.
I'll do that. I will try to remember to do that, and then you will
I'm a
remind me.
great
Yes, he's
reminder.
a great reminder. The other thing I want to ask the people online, we've already had the conversation here. Thank you, Hunter, for letting us know we're clear. We are all about kindness and respect, and that includes in the chat. So we ask that you be respectful with your questions. We will, as I said, try to get to as many as we can. If something has been asked in the room that's online, I'll let you know that's been asked. Okay, thank you very much.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Anderl, and I'm in my third year on City Council. It's been an honor, really, to serve the community. I hadn't been that involved in politics up until about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's just amazing to me what our little city does. 25,000 people, a full service city. It's remarkable. I ran initially on a platform of fiscal sustainability and a balanced budget, because you know what? If you don't have the money to write the checks, none of the good stuff you want the city to do happens. So I think with my leadership and others, as well as the fantastic leadership of our city manager, we have gone from a predicted financial crisis in 2018 to a budget that's balanced through the 2021-2022 biennium without raising any new taxes. And during the pandemic, we have continued to where we lost a lot of revenues. The city made smart decisions about that. The city made smart decisions about consolidating departments to streamline things and save money. The city continued to deliver high quality services, even during the pandemic, as well as we could with whatever legal things we were allowed to do. So I will continue that, because you have to be ever vigilant. The budget doesn't stay balanced magically. It has to, financial discipline has to be applied to it. That said, I'm not going to scrimp on essential services. I feel like public safety is one of the most important things. I've been doorbelling. I've probably hit 700 or 800 doors. And I hear public safety. I hear the small town community. I hear public safety so many times. And that means so many different things. I mean, it means adequate funding for the police, right? Which I have voted in favor of. But it also means, keeping our fragile populations safe. Who are experiencing homelessness either on the island or in transit. We've got now tools for the police to help connect people to services. I have voted steadfastly in favor of funding school counselors and adult counselors, senior counselors, all of the wonderful things that Mercer Island Youth and Family Services does. A food pantry, rental assistance, all of that is so important and so, like I said, remarkable that a city of our size can provide. Protecting our parks, keeping them green, keeping them safe, keeping them clean and available and accessible to all. Also a critical component of mine. I worked really hard when we were enacting the Aubrey Davis master plan to ensure that we did not get unnecessary new impervious surfaces that the parks stayed natural and clean, while still doing things that were required by law to do and that are the right thing to do, including adding trails that allow for ADA access and other things like that. That's the work that I've been doing with a lot of other things that we've done on the island, great things over the last 3 years, I think. And I am asking for your support and your vote so that I can continue to do this for the next 4 years. Service to the community that I provide, like I said, it's very valuable. I'm retired now, and I love being able to dedicate the time to it. I want to talk more in the hour to come about what you think is going to be the next great 4 years for Mercer Island. How are we going to revitalize town center? How are we going to keep the island livable and wonderful? How are we going to integrate light rail into our lives? All of those things. But there was a teaser out on Nextdoor earlier this week, I think, or last week, that said October surprise. Do you want to come to Island Books to hear about the incident with Lisa's husband? And there has been quite a bit of posting on social media about this. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what the facts are, or at least what's in the police report, since it was widely circulated. My husband did have an incident back in November of 2020 that was unfortunate, let's say. He has kind of suffered mightily at my hands as a result, and it's been a tough year. That matter, I had hoped to consider private, but realistically knew that it wouldn't be. It is resolved now. My husband has taken responsibility for his actions. He's paid a fine and he will perform community service. And I'm hopeful that the matter will be behind us. Yeah, this is a hard year. That said, I do think there's one thing that was wrong about that post that said October surprise. This was not a surprise. I've known since January of this year that the people who would oppose him in the election had this information about my husband and would attempt to roll it out at the last minute in an attempt to either damage my reputation or bully me or humiliate me out of the race. And I just want to say that that's not going to happen. I made a vow to my husband. Certainly, this is not the worst thing that anybody's ever done. Spouses have years together that aren't perfect, but they stay together and they tough it out and they become stronger and better as a result. My husband knew that this would also come out and knew that he would be facing some potential embarrassment, public scrutiny that he didn't really sign up for as the spouse of an elected person, not a public figure himself. Yet he supported me 100% in my reelection bid. And we made this decision together that I would run and this would come out and we would deal with it. And so that's kind of where we're at on it. I would like to thank you all for coming. I've gotten some nice notes from people who said, gee whiz, everybody has less than perfect days. And that kind of compassion and that kind of grace is really, really nice. It makes me feel like I do live in a fairly little small town. So thanks.
Can I kick it off with one question right here, Lisa?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of easy, just to get us in and moving.
Yeah, you bet.
Says, hi Lisa, this may have already been answered, but if not, I see you currently hold a council position 4. Why are you running for a different council position? Tammy Fetterman is asking that question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I answered that. Somebody asked me that on Nextdoor some months. Oh, the question is, you're currently in council position number 4. Why did you switch positions to run for position number 6? I knew that my opponent, Kate, had filed for position number 6, and I frankly felt quite worried about the future of the island should she attain office. I feel like her policies and her views are much more aligned with what some of the failed policies that have been implemented in Seattle. I have read a number of her comments. I've seen what she said on Nextdoor and what her positions are on things. Of course, there was a debate about the homelessness the encampments ordinance and some other very dramatic differentiators between her positions and mine. And I honestly felt like I had the best chance of ensuring that she did not get into office, because I think it is important for the future of at least the island that I know and love, that those policies not be put in place here. Any questions? So anybody want to tell me what you think is going to be great or coming down the road, or what should the city be looking at? I mean, the city, like I said, we do so many boring things like keep the roads paved and keep the water and sewer systems going. And all of those are multi-million-dollar projects, but they're not very sexy. You know, we just kind of take it for granted. But yeah, Sarah.
I'm interested in learning more about the Tolley's property. I heard that that was going to be a police precinct. Is that true?
Okay, so the question was, I'm interested in learning more about the Tolley's property and wondering if that's going to become a police precinct. It is my understanding that that is the current plan. And I don't know why I'm not as more up to speed on whether it's a done deal or not, but I believe that that is a desire to use that as a kind of a downtown police station to enable greater community contact between our police officers and community, and also because of the increased traffic that we're expecting when the rail starts to run in 2023. So hopefully that comes to fruition. That would be a nice use of that property. Tim.
Hey, first of all, thanks for your service. I'm sure that during campaigns and election season, candidates often wonder why they do this. So thank you for your service for 3 years to our community. One of the issues that I think is interesting right now, I know you've talked a lot about kind of differentiating Mercer Island versus Seattle and some of the things that you see around the region. And one of the things that's happening in Seattle right now is a move toward eliminating single-family neighborhoods, allowing people to build, quad plexes or whatever they're called in kind of any neighborhood in Seattle. That's something that's probably going to happen next year in Seattle. How do you think about that on Mercer Island, and what would your position be on Mercer Island on single-family neighborhoods?
Okay, thanks, Tim. So the question, and I'm maybe I'll shorten it up a little bit, but is that laying the groundwork, the assumption is that sometime within the next year or two, Seattle will vote to completely eliminate single-family zoning, single-family neighborhoods, so that triplexes or quadplexes could be built on any single-family lot. And the question is how would I feel about that on Mercer Island? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Close enough? Okay, I'd be adamantly opposed to that. And here's why. I think that single-family neighborhoods bring a unique character that a lot of people still want. And I don't think as a city council person, I should make the decision to take that away from them. People spent a lot of money to live on Mercer Island. I'm fond of saying you don't just accidentally buy $1.5 million house on Mercer Island. You don't end up on Mercer Island because it was all you could afford. People have a lot invested in living on the island. For many of us, our homes on the island are our biggest asset. And the feeling in the neighborhood of the long-term residents in single-family dwellings, the sense of community that you get is also one of our biggest assets. And so I would, while I understand the affordable housing crisis, I don't think that basically destruction of a single kind of neighborhood solves that. I also think that we have a great mix of housing on the island right now. We've got Shorewood, we've got some grandfathered multifamily over in the East Seattle area. We've got apartments and condos downtown here. And we have legislation that enables pretty much anybody to build a 900 square foot ADU on their property to increase, if they wanted to increase density or have friends or family live there, or just have a rental income. That's permissible. There are rules about that, though, that say that the owner of the property has to live in one or the other of the units, so you can't just effectively duplexize, is that a word? Duplexize a lot for like commercial purposes. But yeah, like I said, I mean, when I ask people, when I turn my doorbell, I have a little formula because you can't think of something new every time. If people are new to the island, I ask them why did they move here? And if they've been here for a while, I ask them, why are they still here, or what do they love about it? And I hear small town community, single family neighborhoods, the little streets with no sidewalks, my kid can walk to school. Those types of things don't exist once you densify a neighborhood. Additionally, I think one of the things that will happen in Seattle is that I don't think that these units are necessarily going to be required to provide parking. And so you're going to really impact traffic patterns and people's ability to find a place to put their car, because just because you don't provide parking doesn't mean people don't bring cars. So does that answer your question, Tim?
It does, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one on the chat. Can I ask this one really quickly? Why is it taking so long to find a permanent fire chief?
Well, it's not taken that long to find a permanent fire chief. I think Chief Heitman just left in the spring. So we have a contract with Jeff Clark, our interim fire chief, who's on contract from East Side Fire and Rescue. I think this is a wonderful thing that the city manager has done. This was her decision to hire on a contract basis. We have the fire department is an extensive department, and we have to think about innovative service delivery models within the fire department if we want to retain the level of service that we have. We need to retain the North End Fire Station and the South End Fire Station. We need to retain the levels of staffing we have with EMTs and the absolutely world-class response time that we have with these firefighters and emergency responders. But the way contracting helps us save some administrative costs. And so I think that I would rather save administrative costs than save service delivery costs. So I don't want to sacrifice any of the people who are on the island doing the work. And this is enabling us to retain that and stay in budget. So I think that in due time, Jesse will make a decision about how to head up the fire department. But the city council is a policymaking body. We don't get into operations really, and nor should we. The city manager is the CEO of the city, and the department heads work for her. She makes decisions about how to fill those positions. And so far, all with my blessing, honestly, but she needs to look at budget issues. And I think that nobody should make a decision about how to deliver services unless you also look at the financial cost and benefits of that. And I think she's doing a really good job of that right now. So how to staff that position long-term will be a decision that will come in due course.
Thank you. Sorry, Gary. Go
Gary?
ahead.
One of the biggest things I worry about is sound transit. What's your perspective, and what do you think we need to do to try and protect the island and what's coming with sound transit?
Thanks. So the question is, I worry about sound transit. What's your perspective, and what do you think we need to do to protect the island from negative impacts of sound transit? Fair? Okay. I was one of the moving council members to try to stop sound transit from implementing what they called the optimum configuration, which is 20 buses per hour on the north end during peak hours. I thought that was crazy. It was outside of what they had agreed to in the settlement agreement. The potential for negative interactions between pedestrians and cars and bicycles just seemed phenomenal to me, particularly with them wanting to also do something in contravention of the settlement agreement, which is drop people off on the north side of North Mercer Way, which meant you would encourage a huge jaywalking situation as people dashed across the middle of North Mercer to catch the train. So we are currently in litigation with Sound Transit to hold them to the more limited configurations, which is what they promised that would be adequate for them. We have also ramped up hiring of additional police officers. This year, instead of 2, the chief of police came to us and said, I would like authorization to hire 4 because we have Sound Transit coming. There may be a need for increased police presence. It takes us a year to get these candidates through academy and on to the force. And oh, by the way, these are 4 of the best candidates I have ever met in my life. They bring diversity, they bring, youth, enthusiasm, and we need to do that. And I mean, to council's credit, I would say we voted unanimously to tell the chief to get all 4 of them. So we're doing that. We're also, looking at the traffic patterns there, and I'm not a traffic engineer or an expert, but we are going to need to find ways, to minimize the potential for negative interactions. And I'm not exactly sure how that works, especially with that being kind of the east-west bicycle corridor. But it is, I think, something that you're going to want a council person who is going to try to balance the needs of transit with the needs of our residents, putting the needs of our residents first, because we can't have bottlenecks on North Mercer that prevent people from getting on and off the freeway or from the south end to the north end. So I'm not telling you what I can do about it, because of course Sound Transit's a $1 billion behemoth and difficult to it's difficult to be litigating against them, frankly, but I will tell you that I will be ever vigilant, and it is on my radar, and I care very much about that issue. Don?
On Sound Transit, at one of the city council meetings, a woman came from King County and said something to the effect that since they so generously gave us Sound Transit, that we're obligated for housing. We've met her to 2040 in her housing. It was a brief discussion from her. Do you know anything more about that?
I know that there is, okay, so sorry, here's the question. John said that he thought he remembered somebody from King County coming to one of the city council meetings and saying that because we now had the benefit of the light rail station, we had some obligation to increase housing or increase density.
Next to the.
Next, near light rail. And so what are my thoughts on that?
Are we obligated?
We're not now, but
Okay.
honestly, there's been a move in the legislature the last couple of years to try to pass a statewide mandate that would require additional density, overriding local regulations, requiring additional density near high capacity transit. And I would be very much against that. I do not think that the state legislature should be taking away local control over our zoning decisions. And I don't think that a one size fits all fits anyone.
Well, it seems premature at this point. Sound Transit whole idea started 20 years ago. Well, technology's changed. By the time this thing's up and running, who knows what, self-driving cars.
That's right. I mean, there's a lot of talk on social media and in blogs and whatever about whether the ridership projections are inflated, or whether they were inflated at the time they were made, or whether, post-pandemic they could ever be met, because the way people work and live is, just really made a dramatic shift. So it does seem premature, but like I said, there is a push to require that. And then I believe there's a lot of federal money being given to the state to encourage transit-oriented development, is what they call it, TOD. And people always kind of go, oh, free money, let's take free money. But it's not free money. There's a cost to, again, the character of the neighborhood, the traffic, the fact that we are an island, obviously part of a larger region, but we are an island. We have limited capacity, limited infrastructure, and limited land. There's not just a lot of vacant land. So I would not be the one to tell people who own single family homes that they have to give those up so that we can build high rises because they're within a quarter of a mile of the transit station.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Lloyd,
Is the city being served by ecology or whatever they call it, garbage company?
Recology? Well, is the city being served by Recology, the garbage company? As many of you will remember, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we changed from Republic Services to Recology, and then there were some bumps in the road. I actually, and I've been hearing some complaints recently about compost not being picked up and some other things. I personally sit on as the council liaison to the utility board. And I know that in November, our utility board meeting, the new head of the ecology, because they changed, I think their CEO or their general manager is different now, will be coming to speak with us. I know that I personally had some collection pickup and responsiveness issues with them as well. We'll be talking to them about that. There's traffic on Nextdoor that says that they don't do a good job of returning customer phone calls. So we definitely want to address that. We are under contract with them though. So just as we are under contract with Sound Transit and I expect Sound Transit to hold to their end of the agreement, I will expect Ecology to hold to its end of the agreement, and we'll take, if necessary, take action to pursue remedies under the contract if they're not operating according to standards.
Can we get out? How long does the contract last?
You know, I don't know how long the contract is. I would have to double check. I think it's 10 years. I don't know how egregious their performance would have to be to break it. It's tough to break the contract like that, and nor do you want to, because you know, if you've got continuity, if you've got good continuity of service, you know, the drivers always have to learn the addresses and learn the island, and so you're going to have, even if you kick them to the curb, so to speak, put them in the recycle bin, then you'd have a new carrier with other issues that would have a ramp up speed. So I would, you know, just like a marriage, right? If you can fix what's wrong, it's easier than getting a new one.
Okay, so 3 years for the council person.
Yes. Oh, it really that long?
It has been, it seems like. Are things better now? One, and follow-up is, what would you be doing to make them still better or fix anything that's wrong?
Better for me or better for the city?
Let's go for the city.
Okay, let's go with the city. Yeah, I think things are honestly a lot better.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, Matt asked, so you've been a council person for 3 years now. Are things better for the city, and what would you be doing upcoming to
That's
make
right.
them even better? Yeah, I think they're a lot better, honestly. Someone in a cell phone in the background. You know, since I've been on council, and like I said, with all kudos to our new city manager, Jesse, who's made a lot of the hard decisions, but we've gotten so much more streamlined. I mean, we are delivering virtually pre-pandemic levels of service with a much more streamlined city staff. Smart things have been done, such as combining the Parks and Recreation Department and the right-of-way department into the Public Works Department, so that we have people who trim trees in parks and people who trim trees in the right-of-way. And now they're in one department and labor can be shared. If you need storm cleanup on Island Crest Way, then that's can take priority over storm cleanup in Luther Burbank Park, because you want to open the roads, and so you can pull in not only your right-of-way people, but you can pull in your Parks and Rec maintenance people who are qualified to do the same kind of work. And that saves on overtime, and it gets the job done more quickly. So that's just one really, really smart move that has taken place. We've done, just my train of thought just derailed itself. We've got, we're taking a look at the town center again, and I know that that's kind of seems like Groundhog Day. We do it a lot, but I think we have a council here who really wants to encourage retail in the town center, and we'll hopefully modify the code to make that stronger, because I think having Mercer Island be a good place to shop for people who live here is a wonderful thing. Not only is it a service to the community, not only does it create community. I forget to thank you guys for the wonderful sense of community you create. That was part of my opening remarks, was to thank the bookstore. But I mean, yes, this is such a wonderful forum, and they are so generous with their time. And this doesn't happen in a big box store. This doesn't happen if you are all apartments and no retail. So, and it's good for the environment. I mean, if you're going to get people to shop on the island instead of driving to Factoria or Bellevue or Issaquah or Northgate or something like that, this is all great. So we're doing that. We've got, like I said, because we have a balanced budget, we have this wonderful 6-year transportation improvement plan, which is paving shoulders and rehabbing roads and making sure we don't have potholes, and making sure we have money that when East Mercer Way slides out again, we can expeditiously repair it. And like I said, because we've been smart with how we came out of the pandemic, because we're smart with our money, we have money to allocate to a restart program for Parks and Rec, which we needed because we weren't doing anything. The community center wasn't open, the thrift shop wasn't open. Now all of those things, we can throw money at them to get them going, and things are starting to work again. And this is all, like I said, without a tax increase. So I think we've done really good things. I'm excited about the fact that we're going to be gradually replacing all of the water meters in every residence on the island with digital meters that we can read electronically. We can take a city staff person off the road. They don't have to drive around and manually read the meters. And the meters are going to be more efficient and more accurate. So I think that's like a $6 million project again, because fiscally, smart management, we're able to do those kinds of things as we need to. There was one other thing that I was thinking of, and it'll come back around, and then maybe I'll interrupt myself, but I would continue over the next 4 years to be working on that, continuing to preserve the quality of life on the island, continuing to do what we can as a city to encourage the right kind of development in town center, to keep it vibrant and to keep it wonderful, to keep and to keep our parks safe, our streets safe, keep counselors in the schools for the kids. I vow to fund that no matter what. There was some talk this year about whether we needed the levy to fund the school counselors. We've actually been able to use federal pandemic relief money, and then that gives us time to see whether the thrift shop can in fact throw off enough revenues along with other sources to fund the counselors that way. But one way or the other, they'll be funded no matter what. So that's what I'll keep doing.
Well, I think it also the CPD, it's being completely revamped. We spent an incredible amount of money on land use issues that were dead end, cost fortunes, wasted an immense amount of time.
Yeah,
So that's being redone by.
Yeah, the community planning and development department actually was pretty much decimated during the pandemic because we had to furlough many employees because the construction was prohibited, and so building permits weren't being issued, and so you can't have people working when they don't have anything to work on. But I think there's an opportunity there to rebuild it in the right way, and to also then make the permitting process easier and more streamlined. That is one of the things I hear as a council person, that it just takes too darn long to get a permit for anything from new construction to a fence or a shed. And so definitely can use technology to enhance that. And then speaking of technology, one of the other things that the city is doing is getting an entirely new financial management system, which will be much more streamlined, help us track hours, help us track productivity, help us track where expenses are being incurred. Billing systems will talk to each other in a way that they don't now. So it's that's an investment, but it's a great efficiency investment. Mike, you got your hand up?
Lisa, elections, of course, are about choices. And I would think that the candidate is probably the most qualified person because they're studying the issue so much. In your opinion, what are the two issues that separate you from your opponent? Give those people who are listening the service that you know that there's the most daylight from a policy perspective between you and your opponent.
Well, it's interesting. We haven't had an opportunity to have a debate yet. So I feel somewhat reluctant to characterize my opponent's positions on things other than what I've read in her flyers. And I don't feel.
Well, don't put it that way then. Just say, this is what I believe very strongly. And I believe there's the most daylight between me and my opponent.
Well, I think.
Can you repeat it?
Oh, yeah. So the question is, what are the two issues you think where there's the most daylight between me and my opponent? And I personally think public safety is one of the huge issues. I think I don't know Kate's position on funding the police, but I know that many of her endorsers have supported other candidates who propose defunding the police. So I'm going to say those organizations that support defunding the police do not support me. Maybe that's an area of significant daylight. Along the same lines of public safety was the ordinance about encampments in public spaces. My opponent is saying nobody supports those, but the positions that she took would have effectively weakened the ordinance that we passed to the point where it would be unenforceable, thereby allowing encampments in public spaces. And I would not. I fought against that. I voted in favor of the stronger ordinance. I don't know what her fiscal policies are, but so I just won't go there. I would just say, honestly, public safety and single family neighborhoods. I've read some material that says that she will work with regional coalitions to support multiple housing options on the island. Again, we don't have extra land right now. I don't know what those multiple housing options look like, how they become affordable. I definitely support affordable housing. I support the city's contribution to regional coalitions for affordable housing, but I'm not in favor of damaging single family neighborhoods for more density. Ashley.
So on that note, in February, a very important ordinance passed, which was designed to protect our public spaces for their intended use. And that passed 6-1. I know this was on the work plan for over a year before it came to council. So thanks for your diligence to get it to that point. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on the work that you and Councilmember Neese, along with Chief Holmes, what you've been doing since the ordinance. I read something about reaching out to local shelters and some things that have been happening since that passed.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, there was, I think, an article in the Mercer Island Reporter about it, but for those who don't know, the question Ashley asked is, after you passed the ordinance about public encampments, what work have you and Councilmember Neese and Chief Holmes been doing for additional outreach on the homelessness issue? And so is that a fair summary? Yeah. So Councilmember Neese and I worked with Chief Holmes, and this had been kind of, even as we passed the ordinance in February, part of the long-term plan was to create some sort of an outreach mechanism so that, we weren't criminalizing homelessness, we weren't criminalizing poverty, we were giving the police tools to talk to people who were experiencing those issues, who were potentially thinking that it would be okay to set up an encampment on our public land, and to encourage them to instead get services, get help, get a path out of the tent, as it were. And to that end, we recently, the council recently allocated $20,000, which doesn't sound like much, but I'll tell you in a minute that that will fund outreach from the Congregation for the Homeless and Sophia's Way through the end of 2022. That for them to include Mercer Island in their geographic area of where they will provide outreach. And when Chief Holmes reported to the council back in September on how the ordinance had worked over the last 6 months, he reported that there had been no arrests. There had been some very productive and effective encounters with people who were potentially in that situation to be able to connect them to services, because the police did have the tool of saying, the ordinance says you can't stay here. You have to either move on or let us find you a shelter bed. You have to take a shelter bed. You can't sleep here. And those outreach efforts have been very effective. And then for that reason, then that kind of flowed and segued into, well, can we partner with some organizations that are maybe even better qualified to do this than the police are? And of course, the Sophia's Way and Congregation for the Homeless have trained people who can connect people with support and have more mental health training and social work kind of training that will make the interactions, I think, even more effective, so that people are not kind of left to suffer on their own. And I'm really happy that we were able to allocate that money, and we'll see how it goes and whether there are opportunities for even more productive partnerships down the road.
That's an online
Online?
question. Wonderful, thank you. Steve Frazier. Can you address how Mercer Island might respond if light rail proves to be popular? In particular, how would we make more parking available within walking distance of the light rail station so that residents from all over the island can take advantage of light rail?
Yeah, great question. So you guys all heard the question. I don't have to repeat it back. More parking. Well, that of course was part of the plan for Tully's until it wasn't, was to make that a parking structure. We could still potentially develop that as a parking structure. It is unclear what the demand for commuter parking is going to be, I think. And I think, but another thing that we could do would be to try to get better local bus service on the island so that people from the south end can access the north end transit without having to take their own car up there. So, I think I can't conjure a parking lot out of thin air, but there are some options that we can look at. And of course, now there is the reservation system at the park and ride. I mean, people aren't in love with that idea, but it is something.
What happened to Lyft? Uber or Lyft?
They're still around.
That was a city plan.
Oh, yeah, I think the city did spend some sound transit settlement money on subsidizing the last mile. But then COVID, nothing since. Nobody wanted to get in a car with a stranger. Tracy?
Given that we're in Island Books, I was hoping you would share what your favorite book is.
Favorite book, you're putting me on the spot. I thought you were going to tell me the questions in advance. You know what? I haven't read much fiction in a long time. The most recent piece of fiction I read was
You don't have to be fiction.
no, Gentleman in Moscow, which was just fabulous. I can't wait to read it again. But I actually always loved. My dad was a real naturalist, kind of an amateur botanist and horticulturalist, and taught us to just love the natural world and identify plants and birds. And so I've always loved reading nature essays. And I can't think of a particular one, but I love them because these essays are like in short little bites. So they're a great bedtime read. You don't get into a page turner situation where you can't put it down. You get a little 10 or 12 page essay and it's great. Come on, people, something else got to be on your mind. John, again?
Before your tenure at city council, a lot of special interest groups were partnering with the city, which cost us dearly money-wise. And is that a lesson that's been learned or talked about through the city council?
Special interest groups, what do you mean by that?
Well, Micah was one. He bought Tully's. It was supposedly for parking, but it was driven by that. It was 6 years of trying to get that through at the park over here, the CFC. Kind of, there's 3 or 4 items that should have been, the city should have just let the interest groups produce this stuff, not partner with them. So
Yeah,
there's
so,
a huge amount of money lost through that.
yeah, so the question is, city maybe tried to partner with or support, certain groups such as MICA, the Mercer Island Center for the Arts. And, what lessons has the city learned about doing that, given that most of these projects have not come to fruition? Yeah, I think that was a good lesson. I think I was brand new on council when we voted to whether to buy the Tully's property or not, and I said, let's wait. No, not to buy it, whether to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the developer. We owned the property. So let's wait, because we don't have a plan yet. And MICA doesn't have funding. But yet the council did in fact vote to enter into the memorandum of understanding, and then now that project has been shelved. So yeah, I think we need to be, I think that is a fiscal prudency issue. I think we do need to be a lot more careful with not committing money or resources, frankly, even staff time. Staff time is money.
That's what I was talking about. How much
Yeah.
over that 6 years of time, there's a huge amount of money.
So no, lessons learned. I mean, the first year on council, you're drinking out of a fire hose. There's so much to learn about what the city does, so much that you don't, as I said, you don't even see the water system, the chlorination system that we have on the island. We've got 19 different sewer outflow pumps that go to the line around the lake that have to be maintained. And we've got all these wonderful technicians and engineers, and we own our own snow plows, and we own our own street sweeper, and just kind of learning the magnitude of all of the services that the city offers takes up pretty much your first year of council. So I like to think I've got that under my belt. But yeah, what you say has definitely resonates with me in terms of not devoting city resources to projects that are either partly dependent on other entities or that are going to take up a lot of resources without an assured outcome.
So we're at the 6 o'clock mark. We have 15 more minutes. So
Yes.
Yes, my question is leadership. Do you have a book or a model that you might use as part of your DNA in making decisions?
Well, thanks for that. So the question is leadership. What do I have a book or a model in terms of how I make decisions? I did a wonderful radio interview with the Mercer Island High School radio station, and Sophie Prock, interviewed me, and we had 10 questions that they gave us in advance, and she asked like 4 or 5 of them, and she said, well, what? So I had time to think about them, but one of the questions that I was asked is, well, what if somebody on council or somebody, a constituent in the community disagrees with you, what approach would you take? And I said, I think one of the most important things to do is to just listen to what they have to say. And so that is a big component of my leadership and decision-making style as well, is just listen to what other people have to say. Because that's how you learn things. It's also how you change people's minds, frankly, because I could give you a 10-minute speech on why I'm right, but if that doesn't address any of the reasons why you think you're right, we're not going to get anywhere. So I need to hear why you have your position before I start to talk. or before I start to kind of reason through. So I like to make decisions based on facts and data. I like to look at the financial implications of any decision. I like to look at the social implications of any decision. How does this affect our community? And I like to take resident community feedback, which is actually, frankly, why it's been wonderful to be doing doorbelling, because especially in a pandemic, which is it's actually been neat because people are home, A, they're home. B, as long as I stand 6 foot back from the front door, everybody's been willing to talk to me. And I get so much good community input, and not all of it is, not everybody agrees with me, obviously, but I sometimes spend more time at those doors than I do at others. Thanks.
Okay, 2 questions online. If you go ahead.
Hi, Lisa. I'm Bridget Stackpole.
Oh, hey, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks. The question I have for you is one of the things I think that does distinguish you from your opponent, especially based on your tenure and the decisions that you've made and your management here in the city, is your fiscal responsibility. And so I wanted to ask you, do you have a background in finance in any way? I know you're an attorney, but can you tell me a little bit about where some of that conviction comes from?
Oh, yeah, thanks. So the question is, because of my stand on fiscal responsibility, do I have a background in finance? In addition to having a background in law that kind of informs my positions on that. And, the joke was always, what do you call an attorney who's good at math? A doctor. So we always like to say, we lawyers don't do math, but I worked for 25 years for the local telephone company, started as was PNB, Pacific Northwest Bell, but then it was already US West when I was hired. And then it became Quest, and then it became CenturyLink, and now it's Lumen. But one of the things that I did was when we were still fully rate regulated by the state, I did rate cases. And so I had to work with all of the financial experts, had to understand our issues, had to understand things like cost of capital and return on investment, and understand money coming in and money going out in a pretty detailed level on multi-page Excel spreadsheets to both be able to defend our position and to cross-examine the other sides. And sure, sometimes I had a financial expert sitting next to me helping me, but unless if somebody's just feeding questions into your ear, it doesn't work. You really have to work hard to understand it yourself. And so I think, and then later in my career, as we became less rate regulated and more service quality regulated, the focus wasn't that intense on the finances, but there were always cases that we were involved in where we would have disputes that required settlement, and you had to do puts and takes, and always do financial analysis. They're asking us to do this, what's it going to cost? Is there a way we can do it less expensively and still produce the result that the other side wants, so that we can have a meeting of minds and reach a settlement without the expensive cost of litigation. So and then I come from a very financially prudent family. I mean, my parents, I worked since I was 15. I had the privilege of having my education paid for, but I was also expected that I work all the time, and that I manage my own money. And I just feel that that's very freeing, actually, because you're not constantly, when you're managing it effectively, you're not constantly worrying about it. So, Tracy?
As a sitting council member, what is your best moment in your opinion?
The best moment.
What is the highlight of your 3 years on council?
Boy.
Have her ask the 3 books question again.
Yeah, the 3 books. I think hiring Jessie Bond as city manager. Honest to God, because she keeps the wheels on. That woman has led with such grace and intelligence during the pandemic. I think, we just have to be super proud of ourselves to have had the wisdom to snag her and keep her, because when She became interim city manager right when the pandemic struck. And then when the new council came in the, yeah, 2019, no. I can't remember, but there was, some thoughts about whether do we need to keep her interim, do the new council members like Jake and Craig need to see her, continue to perform, and we were able to sit down and decide as 7-0 that no, she had already, we'd already test driven this city manager for like 10 months, and she needed the authority to be full city manager, to have excellent ability to hire and retain good people, to recruit. If you're an interim city manager, recruitment is tough because like somebody's not going to come work for you if they don't know if you're going to be around. And she has done an absolute masterful job. I mean, we have a new finance director, we have heads of other departments that are just our new communications guy, Mason, is everybody's just been top notch, and I'm so proud that we hired her.
I have a question in the chat, and then it says, what are the current plans for the property purchased at Island Crest Way and 40th? And that is from Isabel.
Okay, what are the what's the plan for the property that's purchased at Island Crest Way and 40th? Many of you will know that as the favorite sign waving corner of all time. It's the house closest to the high school, so that would be the southeast corner. And that is part of the long-term transportation plan. I believe that the house will be removed and the property will be kind of landscaped in some way. I think that the long-term plan is that it was necessary, ultimately going to be necessary for sight lines and traffic patterns, that northbound Island Crest was going to need a right turn lane there at some point. And the fact that we were able to buy the property now before it was improved, because they were certainly going to either, they were going to remodel it and create something that had greater value, that was the best bang for our buck right now. Kind of a rare opportunity to get a piece of land into the city that where we have the luxury of knowing that we're going to need it, but we're not desperate.
Will it be parkland in lieu of some other property or development?
Will it be parkland in lieu of some other property or development? I don't know. If we don't need all of it, there may be for right of way, there may be an opportunity to create some public space there, but I don't think that the thinking is fully formed on that.
Well, that helps a bit because everybody's wondering when they said sight lines, but a turn lane makes more sense.
Well, the turn lane, but also sight lines, and I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't understand that. I'm kind of repeating what the street guy told me, but street guy's been the street guy for 30 years, I believe it. Anybody else? I mean, we could just, mingle, have a glass of wine.
Random question. I'm not sure you're the right person to ask it, but is the city having a problem hiring right now?
Oh, actually, we talked about that, and I think the answer is no. The answer is no, as it is. I mean, yes, but not because the city doesn't have good jobs or doesn't pay well. We're have hard time hiring because everybody's having a hard time hiring. Yeah, but you know what? I again, kudos to Jessie and kudos to her leadership team. I mean, they will not take a candidate out of the pool just because we did one recruitment and that was the best candidate. They will say we need to do another recruitment because nobody passed 75% on this pool, and we're gonna go back into the pool again. And they've done that on a couple of occasions and come up with really good hires. So sometimes it takes longer. Yeah, the labor market is crazy for multiple reasons. So yeah, we are not probably able to hire as quickly as we would like to, but I don't think it's because of pay or positions on the side of the city.
Gary, you had a question?
Yeah, your opponent thinks there's a problem with compensation for the police. and perhaps for the fire department, I don't know, but specifically for the police. I'd be curious as to your perspective about it. She says we're having a problem getting people in the police because of compensation.
Yeah. So my opponent says we're having problems getting people into the police department because of compensation, and what do I think about that? I think police are, it's a bargain for unit, so the union bargains the wages and benefits. I believe because things are compared throughout the region, we are competitive. Honestly, one of the things that the chief has told me is that to some extent, we have a hard time with retention because we don't have enough crime. He didn't say it that way, but these young people in their 20s who come out of the academy, I mean, they really want to fight crime. They really want to be where the action is. They don't want to be, just kind of busting kids for smoking dope in the woods or writing tickets, right, because somebody slid through a stop sign or accidentally picked up their cell phone. But one of the things that we have to counter that, I mean, we do have, good pay and benefits, and then we have the Marine Patrol and a couple of other things. I'm trying to think what I was thinking of, but definitely the Marine Patrol is a good retention tool. I mean, it's a great service for the island and some surrounding communities, but it also gives police officers an opportunity to cross-train on something like that, where it is more exciting, it is different, and it does create an incentive to stay in a department, a more sleepy department. But we just hired 4 great candidates. We are vulnerable to being picked off by other cities, bigger cities who have more money, can potentially let us train and get a candidate through the academy, and then we pick them off between years 1 and 5. But I'm not sure that there's any real control over that. And honestly, I don't think it's a money thing. I think it's more of a kind of what you want to be doing. But with but yeah, there's a lot of. I think that the other asset that we have too is that we do have strong community support for our police. The people tend to value the police force here on the island maybe more than they do in some other communities. Carol?
Some have suggested that part of our budget problems is the firefighters working all this overtime. How do you see that? Do you see that as a problem, and how would you fix it?
There has been an unbudgeted overtime problem in the fire department. Part of that is because we are a small department, and if somebody's out on leave, expected or not expected, sometimes the only way you can cover the shift, and we always will cover the shift because it's a matter of public safety, is through overtime. However, I think and I think this is going to be an issue for bargaining. We are going to be bargaining with the fire department. I do think that we need to find a way, and I think that the chief, our interim chief, understands that there is a need for budgeted overtime, but when you start to go into unbudgeted overtime, say $375,000 of budgeted overtime and $375,000 of unbudgeted overtime, that unbudgeted overtime is a problem that needs to be fixed. And I'm not, the fire chief, so I don't know how to fix it, but I have every confidence that that problem will be addressed, because that $375 is money then that is being taken away from other programs. I mean, it's
Is that because of greater absences or unfilled vacancies?
No, absences.
Absences due to
Absences due to what? The many reasons why people are out is they have sick leave that they can use. They have parental leave that they can use. There are various, planned and unplanned outages. As I said, I don't manage the fire department, but those are my understanding, and some training things sometimes. If training comes up, if scheduled training comes up, so certain firefighters are going to be out, then just one firefighter out can create a whole bunch of overtime. because there's nobody to backfill because those people are in training. So,
we haven't budgeted for those.
no, I think we've budgeted properly. I think that there needs to take a hard look at why all of this overtime is happening and whether there are more efficient ways to fill the shifts.
So I have, you go ahead, Mr. Sabah.
Well, thank you. I'm curious, your firefighting, that's an interesting point because Kate, your competitor, said she's firefighter endorsed, and there's some FUD going around that says it's really not the firefighters, it's the firefighters union or the union. Do you know who has endorsed Kate from firefighters? Is it a poll from the firefighters here that they decided to endorse your competitor, or is it simply the union? I don't understand how she can claim firefighter endorsement.
Yeah. My understanding is that it is the union that has endorsed Kate. And of course, the union has different interests than the fire department itself. The union has interests related to pay and benefits. And we will be bargaining that contract. And the council will have to vote on it. So I'm grateful that I don't have an endorsement or any campaign contributions from that union, because it would create a potential conflict of interest in my mind to vote on a contract. I mean, not that $1,000 buys a person, of course not, but can you be impartial? Are you taking the hardest line for the residents, the city, the budget of the city's money, your money. So yeah, I think you need to be really neutral on that and try to get the best contract we can get.
Okay, so I know we're a little bit over and that's fine. And she will stay, Lisa, you'll stay and chat if anybody has questions afterwards.
So you
But I
find
have
out.
one question that somebody's asked that I really would like. It's kind of a positive question. I kind of like it. What advice, and then my husband gets the last question. What advice would you give to the any aspiring council member?
Buckle up. It's harder than you think. It takes more time than you think. And it's also more rewarding than you might have even hoped.
Great, thank you. And then my husband gets the last question.
Victor.
What's your spirit animal? We've asked all the candidates
Yeah.
except for Deborah Lurie. That's our closing question.
What's the question?
What's your spirit animal?
Tiger.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
This was wonderful forum. You know that there was a little bit of a difficult start for me to do this, and I just appreciate your grace and your attendance and your support, and I'm glad I live here.